Hey YouTubers, listen, this is Mike from S&S Auto. How are you guys today? Alright, today we're going to be ripping out a motor out of a Honda Accord 2002. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drain all the fluids and unplug the battery, of course. You don't want to arc any wires around. It's my first video, so don't judge me too harshly. This guy, he decided he was speed racer and decided to play mechanic and overfilled his oil. I don't know if you could see it, but as you can see, he blew a valve cover gasket, blew the rear main seal, blew the front main seal, and the head gasket. I also believe that he either blew the rings or the valve seals. But we're going to go ahead. I'm going to rebuild this motor. I'm going to drop another one in there. Probably sell this one. Let's see, maybe 700. But I'm going to pause you right now, and I'll be back in a minute. Alright YouTubers, we got fluids draining. The antifreeze little nut is right there. You just twist that off, open up the radiator cap. It'll come out pretty quickly sometimes. Obviously, drain the oil. What you're going to want to do is on this one, I'm not sure, I'm probably just going to unbolt the manifold, let the exhaust hang down a little bit. Got two 10mm bolts here, where you got 14s up there. Can't really see it. Lift makes things a lot easier. So yeah, let the fluids drain. It's pretty important. You know, you go start unplugging hoses and stuff, and you run into problems such as, oh, I just spilled antifreeze all over the place because I'm a moron and didn't drain the fluid. The same thing goes for the tranny. You don't need to drain the tranny. What you're going to want to do is when you unhook the transmission, which on this it went in factory, so I'm going to pull it out just as it was and move motor and tranny out at the same time. You're just going to want to do the tranny lines and have a bucket underneath the lines, just so they don't get fluid all over the place. Most of the time, try to disconnect it from the bottom if you can. You see hose right here for the tranny. And then, you know, it's just a less messy situation. The biggest portion of this whole thing is actually, to me, is just unbolting the wiring, undoing the axles. And once you get the axles on, like this car is going to sit for another like 2 or 3 days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove both axles, and I'm going to just bolt the assembly back up, the tie rod ends and everything, so we can push this car around. Weighs a little bit less, so you know, no motor and training in it, but hey, a little bit easier to do it, especially when I run a shop. So, but I'll be back as soon as this fluid's done drained and back on the ground. Alright YouTubers, with the fluids now drained, okay, this is what you're gonna do. Alright, start like I like to start. Remove the intake. Okay, there's a little screw right here. Alright, you remove that. Then you remove the cooling lines. Alright, after you do that, and then you see this power steering line right here? You gotta kind of want to be careful with that, because it's going to drip all over the damn place. As soon as you remove it, I don't want to cap it off with a, you know, like maybe an extension. Something like this may be a little too small. So what you would do is maybe use the other end of it, like I do. Smaller one though, of course. What you're going to want to do, this little battery tray kind of comes out of there. You see these two bolts? There is one right here, then there's one right here. You're going to want to remove those. Sometimes it'll just come off, like this one underneath the brackets, it's kind of loose. I've noticed there was no bolts in it. And then the same thing. There's a radiator hose back here, and that's about it. You would just undo the lines, you know, for the throttle body. It's pretty much a step by, you just ripping everything the hell apart. There's the fuel line that goes to the fuel rail right here. There's 2 ways you can go about that. You know, I like to go from right here. Just take that off, be careful, it's gas, wrap it in a rag, throw some black tape around it. Alright, so I'm going to pause this. Nope. Alright, YouTubers, as you can see, I got the battery tray out, the intakes out, I got a couple any grease hoses undone. I took the cover off the exhaust manifold. Getting ready to work on this power steering pump right here. There's 2 bolts, one right here and one right here. There's a line. This hose goes all the way down to the rack and pinion, and I don't know if you could see it or not. Give you a second. You see that little 10mm bolt just sitting there right there? That's got to come out. Take that out and you just take this big ass line and move it off to the side. And that's gonna, you know, just leave your power steering pump in. You don't need to take it out, blah 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 blah. After that, see this motor mount bolt? Just this one. Just pull that one right off right there. Spray it up with some PB Blast to do yourself a favor. After that, you're gonna see all these clips, okay, for your injectors. They're right underneath of there. As you can see, right here. There's a connector right here for your intake. Another connector for your UGR valve. You know, there's a harness line right here. You just want to kind of unbolt those, or excuse me, unclip those. As you can see, the harness goes down there to another sensor. Alright, comes up here to your alternator. The whole idea is to take this whole harness and you're going to drape it off to the left hand side on this motor. As you can see, your access point is over here next to your relays and fuses. From there on in, you're going to want to unbolt your exhaust manifold. I'm going to attempt to pull this engine out without, you know, unbolting that, but I have a very funny feeling that I'm going to have to undo the 3 bolts that's underneath here, which is really no big deal. So, I mean, you could do yourself a favor, go up from underneath, undo those bolts, undo the manifold, set the manifold off to the other side. And yeah. More wiring over here. You know, you got your O2 sensor clip right here. Bunch of shifter solenoid right here. You know, there's a clip down there. Can't really see it. Boom. See this one right here? That's got to go. You see these? More shifter solenoids. This got to go. There's a little rubber clip or plastic clip right here. It's got to be moved. You know, just take it off, and then you're gonna have to undo the bolt. That's right here. Goes to your starter solenoid. And there's a little pull-off clip right here. You pull that off. And once you get all these down, there's another clip right here. Okay, goes to your distributor. Another one for your temperature sensor. You got little clips all over the freaking place. There's another snap right here just to hold this wiring harness bracket in place. Another clip right here for your tranny. Alright. There was a clip right here. Obviously, you know, it goes into your intake. And there's one back here. And oh my god. Well, apparently somebody broke this one. You see this? There's fucking coat hanger wrapped around it now. I don't understand, but whatever. You know, I guess it's what are you gonna do? The times are hard. You pull that fucking thing out. And he went between the wires. Don't do shit like this, folks. You see this? If you're gonna do something, take some friggin' black tape, okay? Go around it. This sells shrink wrap, alright? That is big enough to go around this. You might have to squeeze it, but I mean, you get the point. Don't do stuff like this. This is what makes people a backyard mechanic. This is why things go wrong. You know, say if this, you know, comes loose all of a sudden, you know, it's got these wiring right here. It's ripping wires out. And this just so happens to be your throttle body position sensor. Without this, your car's not going to run right. So, don't do stuff like this, folks. Do it the right way the first time. You won't have to worry about, you know, going back in, oh, why is my car doing this? Meanwhile, it was something that you did out of stupidity. Alright, now, after that rant, you got 2 heater core lines right there. Okay? You got one hose right here, and you got one hose right here. Do yourself a favor. Try to disconnect them as close to the engine as possible. You know, hoses get in the way. It's a pretty well-known fact. You just pull them off, same way. Like this one comes all the way down here, goes underneath the distributor, whereas it right into the side of the block. It's right there. Alright. What I like to do sometimes, I mean, if I was just unbolting the transmission, you know, to do it that way and pull the motor out, alright, I pull the distributor off. I still might have to, but if you're going to pull it off, in this case, you're rebuilding the motor, take some tape, wrap the tape around and kind of squeeze the end of it so you can write stuff on it, and number the cylinders. This would be number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because when you go to put this thing back together, and I got 10 years in the shop, you can't remember everything. Then you get stuck trying to figure out the firing order in a book and stuff like that, making sure the motor's top dead center. You don't want to go that route. So, whatever helps you out. You could take a permanent marker, go 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as you can read it, it's legible, you know where they go. Do it the right way. Alright, so I'm going to start moving some of these wires and hoses and stuff, and I'll give you a call in a minute. Hey YouTubers, listen, another thing that you might want to have to do here, okay, there's a ground, little tiny ass ground, right here, goes right to the motor mount. You can unbutton it from either side. There's 10 here, 10 here. I unbolted it from the motor mount, and you just push it off to the side, so when I undo the bolt, and I can put it up, make it a lot easier. Another thing is, you see this right here? This is your fuel line. I'm leaving this on here at the moment right now because I don't want, my work area smelling like gas. But just before we take the motor out, we're gonna remove this bolt. I believe it's a 7/8 wrench, and get it on there and just undo it. After you get it undone, wrap it with a rubber glove, okay, and then put a wire tie around the rubber glove so you stretch it to the hose, so whatever leaks will leak right into the rubber glove. It's genius, I'm telling you. It saves yourself a lot of high headaches. Just remember to disconnect the coolant lines for the heater core. In this instance, this heater core hose right here, okay, I have to remove the distributor. Alright, the distributor is 3 volts. I believe on this one there's one right here. Okay, and there's one right here, 2 volts. Excuse me, I apologize. Don't kill me. Remember to label your spark plug wires. Alright, you want to make sure that they're labeled, firing order and such. And you can only put these back one way as long as these clips are the same, if you choose to do it that way. But just remember to label them. It's a lot of heartache and pain. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of that. Then I'm going to unbolt the exhaust manifold underneath, and then I'll unbolt that after I take the power steering condenser, hose off the power steering pump. Haven't done that yet because I got to do that rubber glove trick right there. Alright, and I'm going to remove the serpentine belts, both of them, and then we're going to go from there. Alright, YouTubers, underneath the car now, you'll see up there there's 3 clips. Alright, one right below the intake, that's a pain in the ass. I'm just going to unbolt that one. One for the oil pressure sensor, and then on the other side there's a temperature sensor. That one just kind of pulls out. So you want to go ahead and undo those, and then you want to undo the heater core hose right there. And we're going to go ahead and leave that bracket alone. But you're going to have a problem with that rear motor mount, so we'll get to that soon. YouTubers, as you can see, the wire harness is now on the side of the motor. What you do is you loop it right underneath the AC line. Makes it a lot easier. It gives you about 6 inches more room to drape this over the side, and when you're removing an engine, you need as much room as possible. Put a towel down, make yourself a little, so you don't scratch the shit out of the customer's car. This ain't mine, so I want them to get it back without any dings or dents and bumps and bruises. You don't want that. When you got a customer, you fucking scratch my car, I want a paint job, don't do that. Alright, so the next step, if you don't want to discharge your AC system, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to remove the serpentine belt, okay, the power steering belt, because there's 2 different belts on here. You want to remove them both, and there's 3 bolts on this AC condenser. There's one right here, one right there, and one right below right there. A little bit of a pain in the ass. Once you get that out, see if you can whittle it around and just push it as close as you can to the car. If you can, take a bungee, wrap it around just to tie it down, so when you get this thing out of there and you go to pull the motor up, it's not in your way. After I get that out, my next step would be to unbolt the exhaust and then go from underneath, unbolt the drive axles, ball joints, tie rod ends, and all that, and I'll get to that in a moment. Okay, YouTubers, listen. Alright, first step in our little motor rebuild here, and I believe now in this case my boss just told me it's a swap, whatever, same difference in pulling it out. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to start lubing shit, okay? We're going to lube boom, boom, boom. Anything that looks rusty and whatnot that you think is going to give you a hard time, take some PB Blaster, okay? This stuff right here is a god in auto mechanics. And as you can tell, I have the extra tall can for good reasons. I use a lot of this stuff, I swear by it. I snap a lot less bolts using this stuff, so you're going to go ahead and you're going to spray everything. Alright, you know, you got motor mounts over there for the tranny mounts, obviously. You got tranny mount bolts down there, which I have missed. You got two right there. One right there. If I had a little bit better accuracy, I'd be alright. One down there. Boom. Okay. The exhaust manifold, the bolts down there. AC condenser bolts, and I also lubed up the adjustment screw for the alternator and the bolts right here and underneath for the power steering pump. Now what you're going to want to do, okay, for starters, since this, you kind of need a pry bar to adjust this power steering pump. Alright, now it's the first belt in your line, so it only makes sense to take the belts off. Alright, first, you know, you're going to sit there and it's going to hang. You try to take the alternator. I mean, it doesn't really make a difference, but you're not going to be able to get one off without the power steering pump belt being removed, because that goes right down to the crank. So, there's a bolt right here. Okay, you're going to take that and you loosen it up. Okay? Doesn't have to come off. Alright? Boom. That's really all you need. Doesn't, I might have went a little overkill on that, but hey, better safe than sorry. That's a 13. This one was the 12. That's right underneath here, as you could probably see, something like that. And we're going to go ahead and crack that. Sometimes they give you a bit of an issue. I probably shouldn't be using this long of an extension, but for purposes of demonstration, I guess I'm in good standing. Now, there's a bolt right underneath here. Where the hell did I drop that? Okay. Probably see it just a little bit better now, but right here, see right there, you take that, okay, kind of get it on there a little bit better than what I had it a second ago, and just loosen it up. Alright, it's the same thing, it's the power steering pump, but this one has an adjuster on it, 10 millimeter, and you're going to want to go ahead and adjust that. Alternators tend to be a bit of a pain in the ass sometimes, so the looser you get this thing, the better. That's all I can really say about that. You go to remove the belt, you're better off. I believe, just stay up there. Down here, you can see there's an adjustment right dead center of the screen. You take that, get your ratchet on there, and just loosen it. Give me one second, I gotta crack this thing. Okay, sorry for the blackout, but you want to go ahead and loosen that right up. Alright, so you got boom, then you got boom. And of course that's going to fluctuate. You got one more screw that's down there, right underneath. Can't really see it too well. Sorry, I got a cell phone. But anyway, it is, I believe it's a 12 millimeter. It looks to be already loose. Let's go ahead and try a 13 first. Actually, that is loose. It really is. Okay. So, grab a little rubber mallet. Do this thing, a little tap. Okay? Nice little tap. See down there, you're going to have to adjust the tensioner just a little bit more down. Sometimes, just because you adjust the tensioner, doesn't mean that this thing's going to come down. Because as you can see, well, you can't really see it, I guess, but the bolt will just come up. Happens a lot. Then you just give a little whack with a rubber mallet. If you don't have a rubber mallet, then I would suggest at least putting a small piece of wood or a rag, something of that nature, underneath of where you're hitting this, because it's only aluminum. It's not very strong metal. It's not meant to be strong. Go ahead and see if you can move that yet off of there. My answer is no. So again, got to drip down a little bit. Keep on loosening it and try it. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm going through this step by step. Normally, I would loosen that bolt out as far as I can get it and go ahead and then tap it. But, of course, demonstration purposes. It's kind of a pain in the ass to do this and hold a cell phone at the same time. Just saying, there YouTube. Go ahead and remove the power steering belt. See? Life is just a little easier. You see how that you kind of get it off with your thumb a little bit. Normally I would have two hands, so forgive me. A little nervous for its video and all, but you know, go ahead, try to get that off of there. Most of the time it doesn't give you any trouble. See how that it just, now there's nothing there. And you got two ways that you can do this. I'm doing a motor swap on this. What I'm thinking about doing, okay, is either taking this whole power steering off, alright, like I said, a little bit more room, but it's not really necessary at the moment. So what I think I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and tighten this bolt back up, make sure it's not loose anymore, you know, kind of snug so it's not flapping in the breeze. And then you take this hose clamp off, comes down, set it about right here. You move the hose, but have a rubber glove on hand. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to do this, but I'm going to try not to black out this time. Now, you see the hose, of course. I got my wire tie, and I have my little rubber glove. Take this clip off, alright, boom, like that. See if that's going to move. It's not going to move. Adjust your pliers out just a little bit. Give it a little turn. Don't clamp on it, but you just kind of want to let the pliers sit there. You turn the hose back and forth a little bit. Makes it easier for it to come off. Get your rubber glove handy. Sorry, I got a wire tie in my mouth. And just pull on that a little bit. Set the rubber glove underneath the hose. You know, minimum. Try not to drop it. I'm trying to go for minimum fluid spillage here, but I know something's going to leak right out of that pump. So go ahead and put the rubber glove over the hose. You can go ahead, just kind of pull it snug like this, and then wrap it. Just like that. So whatever comes down is going to drip to the bottom of this. You take your wire tie, put it over like that. Boom. Take your snips, because I've done this before, don't judge me. I poked myself in the eye a couple times like that. And you see, now all the fluid is going to fill whatever's left in there. Will fill inside the bottom of the glove, making me look like a liar right now, but apparently he was low on power steering fluid. But that's how you do that. If you want to get even a little creative with it, you could just shove a little bit of this in there to keep the glove out of your way, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take this hose, I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to stick it right next to the reservoir wedged in. So I had that. Should avoid kinks like that, but I'm probably going to end up replacing the hose anyway. So now you got that done. You're going to go ahead. Forgive me. You're going to want to tighten that up. That bolt right there, just tighten it up, make it snug. It doesn't have to be tight, because remember, you're going to be adjusting this later, or not in this case. Boom. Okay, now it's not going to move anywhere, and you got everything out of the way. But you see, like I was saying before, you can kind of tell this power steering is dripping right now. It's because I'm moving it around. Nothing really I can do about it. I could just pull the power steering off. I'm going to leave it attached, because the motor that I'm getting is going to have a power steering pump with it, hopefully. If not, then I'll just take this old one, put it in there, and then boom. Alternator can stay where it is. The next order of business, or the next two order of businesses, is such as follows. You have a AC condenser right down there. You're going to want to go ahead and, like I was telling you previously in the video, is remove these three bolts. 1, 2, and the one is kind of faded, you can see right here. You're going to want to do that. You're going to want to take this power steering off, brace it up against the side of here, and maybe bungee it to something. Now, as I was explaining to you earlier in this video, the distributor, okay, you mark all the wires. Let me hang this up. Fucking cooperate with me. Remember how I was explaining to you to mark each and every one of those? I took duct tape. This would go to cylinder number 1. Obviously, it's the closest to the camshaft pulley. We know front, top, dead center, blah, 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 blah. 2, 3, and 4. Now, I already unbolted this because I'm trying not to waste your guys' time on fucking 5 minutes worth of nothing. You know, this is all demonstrational purposes, I guess. Just go ahead, let them hang. They're cool, they're marked. I already unbolted the distributor, okay, and it's plugged. Remember, the wire harness is now sitting on the side of the motor, or excuse me, side of the car. You're just going to want to go ahead, pull it off. Go set it somewhere. This is my little parts, my floor. I need to make another spot down there somewhere. But you see how much room is left. The reason I took that off, alright, is because this AC line right here, the distributor is coming out, and when I go to pull the motor, it's going to sit upwards. And the distributor, because of the training mount, is going to hit this AC line. Now, like I said, my next steps would be to make sure all the vacuum lines are off the motor. As you notice, I still have a couple hooked up right here. 1, 2. Alright, boom. That needs to be moved. Everything else is this heater core line. Some jackass. I could have got this before, but somebody put this clip in asinine. Normally you kind of like stick them up or over here to the side if you can manage that. Makes it a lot easier for the next guy that's working on it. You got this one, and then you got the one up and underneath over there. But sadly, of course, I have to get to this from the underneath of the car. So I'll demonstrate that as I'm removing the axles, the spindle, tie rod end, just so I get the axles out so we can move this tranny out. Excuse me, tranny end motor. Listen, it went in factory. It's coming out that way. That's my theory. I did a Mercedes same way. My boss was like, what the fuck, man? He thought I had to unbolt the tranny to move the engine, and no, I didn't. Like I said, just double, triple, quadruple check. Make sure there's no lines, alright, attached. Because when you're gonna go pull this thing out, you know you're gonna have the engine hoist and you're gonna go jacking this thing up, and you're gonna start busting stuff, and you don't want to bust stuff. It's very bad, because then you got to replace the stuff that you busted, and then it costs you money. And when you're in a professional situation, money means money out of your pocket, so you don't want to have to do that. So you want to take the necessary precautions to prevent that. All right. Like I said, the train lines are right here. I already have a bucket underneath. You can kind of see it, but I gotta switch it because it's the antifreeze. I'm not gonna go ahead and pull these off yet until I'm ready for the motor, because they're just gonna piss tranny fluid everywhere, and I don't do that. Like I said, that and the fuel line right here. You don't want to have to smell gas and everything in your work spot. Like I said, the next would be the exhausts on both underneath, and then we'll come back up top when we're ready to pull the motor to take off the manifold, which I don't need to. I might. It all depends on how these exhaust bolts that go into the manifold are going to affect me. See if they're actually just going to come out. If they feel alright, just take the gun to them. So if worst comes to worst, they'll come out, but I need to replace them. If not, then you're talking snap, and then you got to drill, tap, die, maybe bolt and nut it. You don't want to go that route. It sucks. Alright? So, I'm going to go ahead and remove the AC condenser. Tie it off. I'll show you that in a minute. And we'll go from there. Alright, YouTubers. As you can see, there's the AC condenser. I kind of tied it off a little bit. Bungee cord works wonders. My next step is I'm going to go up underneath, and the 3 bolts for the manifold, you know, for the exhaust, I'm going to take off. Then I'm going to remove the front motor mount. See those 2 bolts right there? You have one right here, and then there's one underneath. And there's also one holding it right down there. Fucking drop it. But right there. Boom. That's got to come off. And it's kind of be rocking there a little bit. Some jackass did a motor job on this before. And you see that one bolt that's not there? Yeah. If you're gonna friggin' do a motor job, at least make sure that one of the components that hold the engine in place is tied down correctly. I mean, that's just a lack of intelligence, for lack of better words, pun intended. It's great, but like I said, leave your tranny lines intact, leave your fuel line intact, make sure there's no vacuum lines. Pretty much what you're doing is taking everything that is visible off the motor that's going to hold this thing in there, you know, all the components. It's going to be an engine and a tranny inside the engine compartment without anything else attached to it. Don't forget that coolant line right there. That goes to the heater core, and there's one in the back of the motor. There's also a 10mm bolt down here for the power steering that you need to remove in order to just kind of like set this hose off to the side. I don't think I'm going to need to, but there's a bracket right here, little cross member, as you can see. There's 2 12mm bolts right there and 2 underneath. I don't think I'm going to need to remove it because the motor is going to kind of come out and then up with the transmission. But I'm going to go ahead and remove that 10mm bolt. Remove all 3 of those exhaust manifold bolts. I'm going to leave the manifold intact on top of the motor, and then I'm going to go underneath. Alright. Okay. Alright, YouTubers. So, in the process of me removing the front motor mount, I noticed something. Give me 1 second. You look down here, there's the motor mounts. Okay. You see that? That is a bad motor mount. If I can take that out and do that, it's not very good there. But as you see, that's the piece of it. Main portion. So I'm gonna have to replace that. Can't put that back in his car. And that's about it for this second. Kind of looks a little crazy now. But like I said, exhaust manifold is next, and we got the antifreeze line that goes to the heater core. Put you on board. Alright, so next order of business here at S&S Auto. See those 3 little bolts up there? 1, 2, 3 for the exhaust. You can take those out. The good news is they don't look entirely that rusty. You know, looks alright to me. So I don't think they're going to give me any problems, but what I'm going to do regardless is I'm going to go ahead and spray them up again. Just to make sure. You can never use enough lube. Remember that, boys. Never. And then you got a 14mm bolt right there. And you got another one right next to it. Pull that off, and the exhaust is going to kind of hang there a little bit. Gotta be careful with stuff like that, though. That's devastating. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is, after I get that off, I'm going to go ahead and take some mechanics wire and kind of like brace it. Just so it doesn't hang. You know, I don't want to have this kid have this exhaust leak. But as you can see, the oil pan's leaking. You know, it's what happens when you put many quarts of oil over what your car is rated for. When I pulled the dipstick out of this thing, wow. He must have had an extra 4 or 5 quarts on top of what he was really supposed to. After I do that, there's a hose up there. That's where the heater core other side goes to. So you're going to want to go ahead and you're going to remove that. Check for anything else that you might need to do under here. After that, it's going to be axle time, which these aren't going to be that bad. You go ahead and remove that bolt right here for the strut tower assembly. You're going to remove the ball joint, you're going to remove the axle nut, you're going to remove the tie rod end nut. But we'll get to that in a minute. Let me just get this exhaust undone. So I only have the fuel line upstairs and the transmission line upstairs to remove. So let's get to work. Alright, so got my exhaust manifold unbolted from below, 3 bolts on the bottom. You see I tied it down a little bit just to keep it away from the motor. It's actually stronger than what I thought it was. I removed the 2 bolts that were in the back. My next step is, see this casing right here? There's a few bolts on this one. Alright, you have one right here, and that looks about it. You see there is one right here. I guess the guy that did this before didn't realize that you probably should take this plate off right here to allow adequate room to brace this cover back up in there. So this is your shifter assembly underneath of this. So that's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to remove these 2 10mm bolts. Okay, undo this bolt, undo this bolt, and undo this bolt. After that, you'll see that there's a little pin inside. I'll open this up real quick and show you. Give me about another 3 minutes. Fellow mechanics, this is your shifter cable. You can see right now it's just kind of flopping there. It's held in by that bracket, of course. You see it comes down. There's no pin right here. Sometimes there's a pin right here. This little 10mm bolt, alright, is right here. all you would do is just kind of pry this away. Okay, you see two little clips. All right, you just want to kind of give them a shove out of the way. They're not very strong. And then you just go get your 10 millimeter, whatever I decided to do with it. Boom. And it just pops out. Two hands. Need 2 hands. This is what it's doing to me. The lack of 2 hands. Yep, whatever. I need 2 hands. But hold on. It annoys me. Boom. Okay. Yeah. A lot easier. So you would take this, go stick it in your overflowing now magnetic tray. Drop 10 mil in your pocket. And this, most of the time, just kind of pulls away like it did. You see how it just easily came out. Then you would just drape it. When I drop this down and I pull the motor out of it and training combination, what's going to happen is you're going to have to take some mechanics wire and tie this up into the engine compartment a little bit. Okay, you don't want that draping out. What you need to do is there's an axle nut right here. Okay, you need to remove both caliper bolts. There's one right here, and there's one underneath. Then there's 2 bracket bolts. I don't know, you can really see this shit's garbage video quality, I saw. But boom, right there, and then one right there. Then you remove the ball joint bolt and pin. There's a bolt right here that you would move on the lower control arm, but it's a bolt and nut. Okay, bolt and nut. Move the tie rod end. Then you would just kind of smash it with a hammer right against the side. Don't get a fork and press it in, because you're going to end up fucking the ball joint, or excuse me, tie rod end, ball joint up. It's easier to get a hammer. Nice big hammer. Something for the likes of this. Okay, and all you're going to do is you're going to just tap, and then you're going to give it a couple good taps, and it's going to pop. Alright? Now, that axle nut socket is a very special thing. It's huge. This one just so happens to be a 36. Alright, you're going to need these in order to undo those. Spray them up. Sometimes there's a lock, like a little pin or a press up against, you can kind of see it on this right there. You just take a screwdriver, hammer that out. You see the little groove in that? That's normally where somebody would take a punch and just tap it in there, lock the nut in place. Just undo that. Go through the steps, repeat for both sides, because obviously there's 2 sides. And then you're going to remove the axles. All you do is take a pry bar of some sort, right underneath the transmission where the axle is, stick a boom. You would just pop it. Okay, I'm not going to go ahead and pop this yet. Make sure you have a pan underneath, because most of the time it's going to leak because there's fluid in there. Alright, I'm going to get to work. Hope you guys are enjoying my video. Oh, you know what? You guys have never seen my face, have you? But this is me. This is my shot. Hey, YouTubers, as you can see, the tires are back on. Axles are way down yonder. And I've removed the other hose for the heater core. The next step would be to remove the 2 tranny lines and wrap them like I did the fuel line in the rubber glove. Okay. And then the motor mounts. Boom, boom, boom. Remember, 1, 2, and 3. After you get this tranny mount out, I mean, the thing about this one is you remove this bolt, this bolt, this bolt, okay, and the one back there. Can't really see. Kind of. Boom. Move that bolt. Alright. You're going to want to take this and move it off to the side and out. Alright. So you can get to these 2 bolts. There's one here. There's one right underneath here that I can't even get anything on yet. After you remove those, you're golden. But here's the kicker. what I'm going to have to do is get the engine hoist involved, and I'm going to pause this video so I can go grab the hoist and set it up. Alright, YouTubers, as you can see, there goes the tranny mount. There goes the motor mount off. Everything's tied down. I have my rubber gloves on my tranny lines. Sometimes you can't prevent a bit of a leak, you know. Got the engine hoist underneath, but you know, what am I going to do? Oh well. There's a mounting point down here where the tranny is. I shove a chain through it with a bolt and nut, nice and sturdy. Got your fulcrum right here. And you have another mounting point right there. You're going to go ahead and you're going to go do another quadruple check to make sure that there's nothing in the way. No sort of lines or anything when you go to pull this motor out and tranny out that you know, you're going to snap or you're going to break, and then you're going to have to owe this thing to the customer. It's a loss of money, so you don't want to do that. Or if you're doing this on your own, you don't want to spend extra money. I mean, come on. Who wants to spend extra money on something that they could have prevented, actually? Alright, so you're going to go ahead and I'm going to jack this thing up. Can't do it underneath the camera. You know, I need both hands for this. Very delicate process. Be very careful when moving motors. You know, there's a lot of things you can damage. I can bend this. I can mess up the radiator. There's a power steering reservoir right there. There's a couple things, but you got to be very careful. See, I have the hood propped up to pretty much its maximum position to allow the motor to come up and out without me hitting the hood. A little bored, you know, the thing's, it's there, it's not moving. Should be very careful. I'll be back when the motor's out. Alright, YouTube, there's the motor. You're going to end up having to take the top plume of the intake off, and then you're going to have to undo these two bolts for this gas line, drape it off to the side with a bungee cord. That's about it. Motor comes up and out at an angle. Make sure you put it at an angle. It's not going to come straight up because this antifreeze, or excuse me, AC line. And after that, that's the result. Said be careful, don't break anything, and you'll be all right. And that's my boss, Stevie.
Come on, man. You're not doing YouTube, man.
Hey,
you're the one gotta be famous, not me.
I ain't gonna be famous. I'm just a good tech. I hope you enjoyed my first video. Remember, do it right the first time. You won't ever have to do it again. Thanks for watching.